CMCC and Atrium are known as, you're a non-bank lender, you do equity investments. Can you explain the evolution of your actual business and what were the key factors that drove its growth?
In 1994, when I started Canadian Mortgage Capital, really non-bank lending barely existed. It was really dominated by usually wealthy ex-developers who understood real estate well and wanted to have their hand in real estate, but still allow them to go, many of them were snowbirds, to go down south and not really be active. As a result, they were really difficult to deal with. Many of them were sort of on the loan-to-own program. So I felt as though there was a real opportunity. And while I did mortgage brokerage and restructuring work, because the real estate industry was a bit of a mess in the mid-90s, by 2001, I felt that I really wanted to get back into lending. So I started Atrium with 20 shareholders and $3.5 million of capital. And then I was lucky, about a year later, I got involved in equity through Lehman Brothers, who I'd had one experience with while doing mortgage brokerage, and they liked the way that I underwrote deals. And so they actually gave me the exclusive contract for Ontario, which was unheard of. Lehman at the time was larger than the Royal Bank of Canada. It was a very prestigious organization at that time. And throughout the States, they gave non-exclusive mandates, but I told them if I was going to try and raise their profile in Toronto, I didn't want them to be setting up competing operations after I got their name better known in the Toronto region. So they agreed and gave me an exclusive contract. So I dealt with them from 2002 to 2008 or 2009 when they got into big trouble. So it was sort of lucky on the equity side. On the non-bank lending side, I was just determined to be a lender when the opportunity presented itself.
Maybe this is a good time to talk about the actual Lehman story, and as a result of that relationship and everything that you learned and other relationships that you developed, how that led you into launching equity investment funds.
Lehman was large enough that they only wanted to make large investments. So it was natural that I would go to the tier one developers. And, first and foremost, I went to Daniels and Tridel, two of the very largest developers in the GTA, and many others that were large as well. And in particular, the Tridel relationship really strengthened over time. And it was a real disappointment when Lehman got into trouble in 2008, because I'd created all these relationships. I had a fantastic rapport with these companies. They liked the fact that I was representing a big organization, but that it was me they were dealing with and not somebody in New York that they couldn't deal with in person. So I was determined when Lehman went down to continue to try and deal with these parties. And I ended up doing one deal with Tridel with 8 investors, including myself. It was a $16 million deal. In fact, it was in the fall of 2009, I think. So it was in the midst of the financial crisis, but really a superb deal. And I realized, and they realized, that they would prefer, developers generally would prefer for me to have a fund as opposed to putting together a group, which they wouldn't have 100% assurance was going to come together until literally the day of closing, which made them nervous. So putting together the CMCC equity funds was really the next logical step after Lehman went down.